So there's site sections. Another feature they wanted to kind of let you guys know is kind of sun study. So having kind of cluster buildings, how does that affect, and how can you use Rhino to kind of best use it? So let's go back to our site where we kind of have our 3 kind of buildings, and we want to see how kind of the sun will affect their placement, and then you can use this as well. So being in shaded view, it won't really show as much, so you go to rendered view. Sometimes takes a little bit. Some run cleaner. So here is rendered view, and you can go over here to environment and sun. So typically they'll want to see how the shadows play. So here it's on. I can go to now, so it can be the sun right now. And then if I go to our location, you can try to get as close as possible. It's Harrisburg, PA. So then you know that this is kind of what the daylight effect would be at your site. So let's say it's early morning and you want to see how your building kind of sits, and you can see what parts are in shadow. So you can kind of see this wall would get sun and here is in shadow. And then how can you use that to your advantage in the design? How can we get Rhino on your personal computer? There isn't really a discount. Some people kind of bite the bullet and get Rhino. If you have a Mac, you can actually just kind of re-sign up for the free trial every 90 days, which a lot of people with Mac do. If not, like I'm just currently using the 30 or 90-day trial. If you want, you can use SketchUp, which is free. And I can kind of show you guys how to do site in there as well. Or you can just use the computers in Studio as best you can, and they all have Rhino. So going through here, you can kind of pick the day and time. So one thing that they'll always want is kind of the solstice. So go like December 21st. And then you can kind of see at the extreme points, so where there's barely any light and it stays low, what parts will never get sun. So you can kind of do this and take pictures of your site and see how the shadow affects. It can change, and then likewise do the summer solstice where it's maximum gain, and you kind of see how that changes your building. So are there any questions on kind of site building, shadows, sections, anything at all? Okay. So there isn't, we'll kind of go into how to kind of rebuild site. So I'll get out of rendered, back into shaded. So kind of this is what they've given you, and you want to kind of manipulate it as best you can. So let's say you kind of do want to make this area flatter. You want it to kind of be all on this topo, for instance. And you want this topo to kind of come out more like this through cut and fill, which will kind of make your site bigger. Ortho, and then let's say it goes all the way over there. So now this is a good section. And then you can kind of, but then you kind of have to change these to almost follow. And then so I'll just do a couple, kind of make point. And just kind of trimming. Rhino doesn't really like it to kind of work in just one area because it doesn't really work with zero sum. Like you can't draw a boundary and some points and have it all snap. SketchUp can, which is kind of nice. So then let's say we just kind of trim these two and trim these two just to kind of finish it off. So then if I do the same thing as before, kind of select my contours and my two new ones and do the same thing. So extract PT and then patch. It should create kind of a plateau. And then here's how you can kind of see these corners just kind of flare out always. So one thing I like to do is just kind of build a rectangle within the site. And then you can just kind of go to set top, trim, and get rid of it. And then also the points can kind of get in the way and make your computer run really slow. So you just do self PT. That will select all your points and then you just hide them for now, or put them on a layer and hide them that way. So now we have something easier to work with. And then if we go to that area, you can see how it followed these lines and are touching more. Is it, your professors kind of said that it was mostly Rhino use. Is that what all of you use, or are there a lot that use SketchUp or even Revit for this? What do you mean by you want to create a site model that follows a higher contour line? So like you want to kind of rebuild it kind of completely so your building's on a slope, or is that what you mean?
Oh, Sean, it's just me. Like I should let the student. Let the student actually ask their question. But I was interested in like creating a model that would not be square, but we use a contour line as as the side of the model. If you see what I mean. I don't know if I make myself.
So that kind of goes back to I'll try to get it here before it goes too slow. Here we go. So kind of back to here. So I'll get rid of that. So if you kind of do work with your contours and you know what you want, you can work like it that way. So let's say kind of this area again. So within kind of these contours, here I'll put a couple more within this site as well. So let's say you're going to manipulate kind of this area and build. As long as kind of these stay at their level that you're designing at, then you can kind of build it however. So let's say your building kind of follows something like it's up against the retaining wall and you kind of need the contours to go around. So let's say your building's kind of, I don't know, shaped like this. And you kind of want the contours to kind of be built up here, and this is kind of in earth, and this is looking out, something like that. So then you can go through again and change these contours to kind of follow it. So let's say these ones kind of hug more tightly. And then you can kind of just continue this. A couple more. Maybe this one, and finally kind of close the building. Actually, it's the building. And then the rest kind of can go under it and are more spaced out. And we can see how this kind of creates. So one thing I do want to check is though, when you draw, and these are all kind of in 3D, you can see that this happened. So you can see it kind of snap to something. One thing you can do is set it to, you can do set to C-plane, or project to C-plane. And yes, you can delete it, and then it will kind of flatten your draw line. So that way you can bring it back up and match it to your contours. This can happen a lot in Rhino when you kind of draw in a 3D sense. So then if we kind of take all these and do the same thing, extract PD, and then patch, okay, can take a little bit to run, okay. And then here I'll put the building back on so you can see how it kind of sits. Okay. Inner surf again before this kind of goes this way. Further this like you can build it to kind of match whatever you want. So now you extrude the surface. And then you can see how so how we had it kind of hit this wall and then comes slowly down. You can do the same as just kind of redrawing the 2D and then kind of the same steps. Try that real quick. So are there any questions kind of on build up of the site, kind of creating any of these? No questions. So kind of opening up to if anyone needs any more explanation for anything with Rhino or SketchUp kind of site building, you can add it to the chat. Just for this lecture, that's about as much as I kind of had. If there's anything else needed.
Sean, this model, you can use it to 3D print or to have it, is it workable for a CNC model or not?
Yeah, so CNC modeling, I don't know if you guys will be making one this semester, but if so,
Probably
CNC,
not, but
yeah.
I'm curious because they still need to know, if this is actually something useful for model making.
So for kind of CNC or 3D printing, it will read these surfaces. So as long as they're all surfaces, it will read it. And the only thing that it doesn't like is gaps. So even here, so how I kind of made these platforms. So if I hide the buildings, and here I'll get rid of the drawings. So how I kind of made these, so if you were to send this to the 3D printer, it would print these platforms and it would even print like this 6-inch drop of the curb. So that gap doesn't matter to the CNC or 3D printer. The only thing that would matter is, let's say I accidentally move this 6 inches out. That would then kind of cause glitch because the CNC machine wouldn't know how to read this kind of empty space. But whenever you do kind of CNC or 3D print, there are programs that will kind of read your model and will alert you to those. But those are kind of the basis of the 3D print or CNC. And yes, there are tutorials for this on SketchUp. I can kind of show you that real quick if you'd like, because it's very similar. It can also sometimes work a little bit more easily. So you kind of do the same thing where you will import that 2D drawing. So I can do that. So there's the regular CAD file. You don't have to really change anything. Should import it no problem because it's just lines really. So here we go. So we have it all imported, and this one's even easier. You just select your lines. You go to Draw, Sandbox, and from Contour. And sometimes this can take a little bit. There's too many. But basically that's kind of a similar way. SketchUp is a little bit easier in the sense that if you just draw kind of the perimeter of your site and any contour lines, it will snap to all the lines. Rhino, however, if I kind of go back to that while that loads, Rhino doesn't really like that. So kind of, let's say I draw a shape. So let's say kind of this is your site. And you change your elevations to kind of try to fit so this is kind of goes into that. So let's say you kind of do change this area of your site. You can't, in Rhino at least, you can't really just draw the boundary and then put in new points. So here I'll kind of show that. So I'll draw a little site right here. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say this is kind of the plug for your site. And then let's just say there was a few contours. And then you kind of So then you kind of have different, so you have these different kind of contour areas that you want it to snap to. So Rhino, if you were to just kind of do this and extract PT and then patch, it kind of aggregates them. So it won't, so here's our original boundary. Now we go to top and trim. You'll notice that it doesn't line up with this line. So you can't really kind of just plug it in. So that's why I kind of like to keep the entire contour and the entire point cloud. And then if you do kind of change it to just change it, and then you can kind of rerun it, but you can kind of block off an area and kind of change the line and rerun it. The one thing with SketchUp though is it just reads the line and kind of holds it as the most important. So if you were to do this in SketchUp, it would hit every line and snap to every line. So sometimes I kind of work them together, and if I do end up needing to use a plug, I can use SketchUp and just bring it in. It kind of adds a program, but they kind of work in different ways. I can show SketchUp decides to load. Here. 2 inches. Okay. So you can see SketchUp. If I draw any random rectangle and I draw a line and put it, even 10 feet in the air, and it's a ridiculous kind of contour, and you want it to basically snap to all this. If you go to kind of draw sandbox from contour, it will snap to all those lines and fill in the void. So even whatever ridiculous kind of plug you're making for your site, it will kind of snap to it, which can make it a little bit easier to work with. But Rhino has more kind of functions in different methods of drawing. So now if I import the site from before, load fairly, and do the same thing. This might crash again, but we'll try. Should. That's another thing with SketchUp. It reads every little line. Doesn't really have as much computing ability as Rhino. So it kind of works together. Neither of them work perfectly. I don't know if this will load. So are there any other questions? So Yasmin, my Zoom kind of just froze and shut down. So I can't really show anything else on my screen, but I can try to answer any more questions, because I'm afraid if I close Zoom, it will kind of completely close down the lecture. So
I think the students should ask their question. I mean, I will send you an email privately because I'd like, there's a couple of things that I have in mind, but
I was just letting you know in case the screen, if it ends.
yeah.
Sean, we can read out any questions if anyone wants to put them in chat. This is Sandra.
Yeah, I can see the chat. I just can't
Okay.
kind of update my screen share.
Got it.
So, but
Can you make someone else a co-host? Then maybe we can
uh,
let you dip out and then back in.
yeah, let me try that. That might help. Let's see. In control. Yeah, I don't think I can. That's for the most part what I have anyway for this. So fairly straightforward in that aspect for Rhino. And I showed how to get us at Beehive. So for this, if there's any future questions, you can send them our way through there. But besides that, I think that's about everything.
So someone asked in the chat if there's a way to use Grasshopper to edit the contour lines or topography. Did you see that one?
So, oh no, so I can't really get the chat anymore. Thank you for that. So Grasshopper kind of works on its own merit within Rhino. So yes, you can kind of computationally change the topography, and that will probably just work with kind of Grasshopper kind of likes points and curves. So it will get you as far as kind of designing your topography that you want. And then you just use kind of the same commands of extract point and patch to kind of create it. But we can do another lecture later on Grasshopper for kind of select people that want to learn it.
Sounds good. We can update that in the calendar if you want to schedule that, and we'll get a new version of the calendar out too.
Okay. Oh,
Any other
good.
questions from
Okay.
students?
This whole thing works again. Okay. And there actually is one last thing I want to send in the chat. So hopefully this can help any students. So we kind of made a Google form. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And if you guys could just kind of fill it out, you know, on your time, you can probably just fill it out now. It's just a few questions just so we can kind of plan. So I'm going to send a link. And if you just access it, it's just a few questions. It kind of asks what programs you use, skill level, what do you think you'll need help with, just so we can kind of tailor-made the lectures in the future to kind of see what you guys need and prefer. So hopefully that can help us. You have all the drawings you have. So if I go back to the lecture, so what your kind of professors have given you, I can show it all, is the kind of blue contour line and the map with the contours that was here. And those are what you have. So you just have to kind of bring it in, scale it, and kind of go through the steps I just did. Scale it in, grab the curves, extract point, and patch. So it should be fairly simple to upload it. And during this, points can really slow down your computer. So I suggest making sure they're on a separate layer that can easily be turned off. So you'll be getting you have access to these two on by professor. So 2D on the site and then your 3D. Okay, looks like a lot of you are responding, which is nice. So a lot of I can re-import. So just like any other drawing, you're going to file import, and CAD is very easily recognizable, and then you can just open. And in this case, we know the drawing's kind of 2 feet intervals, so we know it's feet and inches, and can click OK. One thing that is kind of weird in Rhino is it likes to send drawings into their space referenced to AutoCAD. So if you kind of click the zoom out, I'm working over here, but if you click zoom out, you can see that the drawing I just imported is all the way over here. So just be cautious about that when you kind of bring it in. Don't think it's just not there and import it a couple times. And then you can just kind of move it back to where you were working. Hopefully that helps. Also, let me try one other thing. Yeah, and then you just bring it in. I try to work around the origin whenever I'm in Rhino, just because when you bring files in and out, it's easier to find them. So I like to kind of snap it. So if you just do move and 0, 0, 0, if you just grab anything, it will automatically kind of snap it to here, and that's just kind of nice. So that way I don't have things kind of floating out in the middle of nowhere in Rhino. So that is, any other questions? As if there are no more questions, that just about does it for this opening lecture. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to send us any questions to the help desk. I'll also put that in the chat. So feel free to use that whenever you've any questions about any of this. We can answer them as quick as possible. Okay. So thanks for being here and watching and learning. And that does it. So your next kind of beehive tutorial will be in 2 weeks. So you'll see one of us again. So thank you.